All right. Can we talk about one of the weirdest public health moments of the last few decades?
That's an incredibly competitive category. I have a couple of really high contenders.
For me, it's the fact that Ebola got its own charity single.
Oh my God. The Band-Aid remake.
Yes, which I love despite everything. And for our younger listeners, there was an original 1984 charity song called Do They Know It's Christmas? The tune I love, the lyrics are cringe. But then in 2014, someone looked at the Ebola outbreak and thought, you know what? This needs a sequel.
A sequel. To be fair, it raised a lot of money.
It did. And as someone who worked in an ICU as it was actively being turned into an Ebola containment unit back in 2014, I appreciate that the intentions were genuinely good.
The execution, however, not exactly stellar.
No. So, for anyone who's never heard it, the song featured a group of British celebrities singing about Africa in a way that would definitely escalate to a call to HR.
And in 2014, they decided, hey, let's assemble a new group of singers, update just a few of those lyrics, and record a version about Ebola instead of famine.
And they did remove some of the real cringe, but it still had this, we're here to explain an entire continent to you energy.
I still feel like I can't say the lyrics out loud on this podcast, even in the new version.
So, for a lot of people, that was when the Ebola outbreak entered popular culture, as well as
the hot zone.
I was going to say the infamous bowling trip that my colleague at Columbia went on.
Oh, also, that's probably a better answer.
I was working in New York at the time in an ICU, and that ICU was being turned into an Ebola biocontainment unit because we were expecting more cases in New York City. And meanwhile, one of my colleagues did get ill, but prior to becoming ill, had visited a bowling alley, and it just led to this New York City-wide panic about bowling.
It sounds like a cruise ship experience that's happening also.
So we should get into it.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Rolin Forward podcast.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Rolin.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rolin.
I'm a psychiatrist.
And I'm a pediatric emergency physician.
And we are acrobats who juggle our clinical time, our research time, podcasting, and being sisters.
And neighbors.
That's true. We still live together. We're in month 3, 4,
5? We're due now. 5?
No regrets yet.
No, it's been great.
It's been great.
It's been great.
And we started this podcast as a way to help demystify health news. Maybe you're seeing these headlines, it's moving really fast, and it's confusing.
And so today, we're talking about Ebola.
And if you're like me, everything you've heard about Ebola is terrifying.
It's one of those diseases that almost feels symbolic at this point. You hear the word Ebola, and you immediately think of hazmat suits, airports, quarantine, zombie movies.
And panic. The good news is, internationally, we're having a very strong public health response. The World Health Organization has declared the current outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda as a public health emergency of international concern.
But there's also a lot of confusion online right now. People are hearing global emergency and travel restrictions, and they might be wondering, is this another COVID situation?
So today we're going to break down, first, what Ebola actually is. Then, what's happening in the current outbreak, why this strain is unusual, how Ebola actually spreads, and why a lot of infectious disease experts are criticizing these new travel restrictions.
And we learn that politics and science are not always the same thing.
Is this a recurrent theme?
Always the theme.
So let's get started. Alicia, basic question first. What is Ebola?
Ebola is a viral hemorrhagic fever caused by several different species of the Ebola virus. It's a severe illness that can damage your blood vessels, it can affect multiple organs, and in some cases cause bleeding complications and shock.
So importantly, this is not a respiratory virus like COVID or measles.
We've talked a lot about COVID and measles on the show, We've talked about how coughing in a grocery store with active measles can result in lots and lots and lots of people getting sick hours later. This is not the case. Ebola spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids from someone who is symptomatic. And that means blood, vomit, diarrhea, saliva, sweat, urine, or other contaminated materials.
Contaminated with those body fluids specifically.
That's correct.
So you don't get Ebola from someone casually walking past you in a grocery store.
No. Ebola is not spread through the air in the way that COVID or measles can, and that distinction really matters.
Now, with those horrible facts, let's jump into what is happening right now in this current outbreak.
So the current outbreak is centered in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, particularly in the Ituri province, with additional cases reported in neighboring Uganda. And the strain involved is called the Bundibugyo strain of the Ebola virus. And that's important, so I have to say it.
Go ahead.
Bundibugyo.
This is how you know you have two ESL graduates right here hosting a podcast. We passed ESL, we did not get A's. And this particular strain is important because you may have heard some exciting news about vaccines for Ebola.
Right, but unfortunately, the current approved Ebola vaccines primarily target the Zaire strain, which is a totally different species. And right now, there are no approved vaccines or treatments specifically for this strain.
And that is one reason public health officials are taking this outbreak so seriously. We don't have the tools that we had during the prior outbreak of the Zaire strain.
Another challenge is geography. The outbreak is happening in regions affected by conflict, displacement, and limited healthcare infrastructure.
And that makes everything harder.
Contact tracing becomes harder, isolation becomes harder, transporting supplies becomes harder, building community trust becomes nearly impossible.
And public trust is a huge issue in these outbreaks.
Huge. During prior Ebola outbreaks, healthcare workers and treatment centers were sometimes attacked because communities were frightened or distrustful of these healthcare authorities.
And that's devastating because outbreaks are controlled through trust and cooperation. So now, Alicia, if someone develops Ebola, what would they actually feel?
Feel like this is a repeat of the hantavirus episode where early Ebola symptoms are nonspecific. Fever, fatigue, malaise, vomiting, diarrhea, headache. It's like every virus we've ever talked about ever.
What is up with these viruses? Viruses are so good at their job.
So good at their job.
They're so good at their job. So early Ebola can initially look like malaria, influenza, gastroenteritis, COVID, being hungover, literally dozens of infections.
In more severe cases, people can develop severe dehydration, shock, organ failure, bleeding complications, and it can lead to death.
And the mortality rate can be very high depending on a particular outbreak, the strain that it is, and the access to care locally.
So now we get to the controversial part.
Because bleeding out of your nose wasn't controversial enough. And here's the controversy. Multiple countries, including the United States, have now imposed travel restrictions or enhanced entry screening related to the Ebola outbreak.
The U.S. has restricted entry for some travelers from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan, and is funneling travelers through designated airports with enhanced screening.
And on the surface, sure, that sounds logical to many people. Dangerous outbreak? Let's stop travel. We've heard this before.
It feels really intuitive. What's the problem with that?
Many infectious disease experts and global health organizations have argued that these broad travel bans are actually not evidence-based and they can actually worsen outbreak control.
Okay, explain that to me because I find that confusing.
The key issue here is that diseases do not respect land borders. They do not care. And public health experts generally prefer programs that prioritize targeted screening, testing, contact tracing, and international cooperation over blanket travel bans around entire regions or countries.
Because once countries start closing the borders, people often stop reporting their symptoms honestly.
Exactly. Or they may choose to travel through informal crossings that are harder to monitor. The WHO has specifically warned that restricting travel and trade can drive movement underground, and that's going to make outbreaks harder to track.
Which is the counterintuitive part.
It's so counterintuitive, and so much of public health is counterintuitive.
And there are other unintended consequences from this too.
Absolutely. With these types of travel restrictions, it can discourage healthcare workers and aid organizations from volunteering because people worry that they won't be able to get home. They might have to go through quarantine restrictions or face stigma afterwards.
And that sounds like exactly the opposite of what you want during an active outbreak.
Outbreaks are controlled at the source. The faster that you can contain transmission locally, the safer that everyone is globally.
And infectious disease experts have repeatedly emphasized that strengthening local healthcare systems is far more effective than panic driven border closures.
The Infectious Disease Society of America, who sponsored one of my research projects when I was a medical student, thank
Whoop
you.
whoop.
They have specifically stated that viruses do not recognize passports, shocking, and that long-term public health investment matters more than nationality-based restrictions.
And this is happening in a really strange moment for U.S. public health infrastructure more broadly.
Yep, because one thing that's getting a lot of attention in infectious disease circles is that earlier this year, there were major cuts affecting CDC staffing, including people connected to outbreak preparedness and epidemic intelligence work.
Which is a little bit of awkward timing for all the outbreaks that we've been talking about.
Super awkward because the Epidemic Intelligence Service, or EIS, is basically the CDC's elite outbreak investigations program. These are people who are disease detectives. They deploy during outbreaks, they track cases, they do contact tracing, they investigate transmission patterns, and they help coordinate public health response.
And they're part of the CDC. And this is a period of major cuts and restructuring across the CDC in general, including EIS officers.
Reports suggest that the agency has lost nearly 30% of its staff since last year, including EIS officers. And this is such a loss. I have actually worked closely with EIS officers during my time at the CDC. I know you have as well. And they are such an international service. The work that they do to help with outbreaks internationally is phenomenal.
On top of that, the CDC has reportedly sent an urgent internal request asking for volunteers to help respond to the outbreak and traveler monitoring efforts.
Which highlights this really important public health reality. You cannot cut the outbreak infrastructure for years and then suddenly expect to rebuild it overnight.
Public health and public health capacity is one of those things that really looks invisible until you need it.
Desperately.
Until the disease is here.
The disease is here. Well, not here, but here. So let's answer the question that everybody is asking. Is this another COVID situation?
No. Ebola is serious. It can be devastating, but Ebola spreads very, very differently from COVID.
It requires direct contact with bodily fluids from someone who's already symptomatic. It does not spread like COVID through respiratory transmissions. And what that means is that it's much harder for Ebola to spread causally.
And that's why outbreaks tend to cluster around caregiving settings, households, hospitals, and unfortunately, funerals.
So public health officials are appropriately concerned, but this is not behaving like a highly contagious airborne pandemic virus.
So, Stephanie, what should people take away from this?
First, Ebola is real and it's serious. And second, most people outside the outbreak region remain at very low risk. And third, the reason public health officials respond aggressively is because rapid containment in these early stages matters enormously.
And the controversy around travel restrictions really highlights a bigger tension in public health. The difference between policies that feel protective versus policies that are actually effective.
Because public health decisions are social, political, economic, and behavioral.
And fear can sometimes push governments towards policies that sound reassuring but can have a lot of unintended consequences.
And with that, that is our episode for this week.
Thank you for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe, and send this to a friend who immediately assumes that every outbreak means that civilization is ending.
I have seen that movie.
I think I am that friend.
You can find us on socials. Send us an email. That's rolin_show, ROLIN_show@gmail.com.
And remember, good public health communication should inform people, not just terrify them.
Forward, doctor, sister, science, facts.
Enter Dad.
Da, 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 da.
Here is our dad. Hey, Dad. You want to say something on the podcast?
Oh, for the podcast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like to say hello?
Hello.
It's not live.
Regarde, you can edit it. From Jean-Claude Rolin to Alicia.
I'm being scolded. Merci. Thanks, Dan.
Pas édité, j'espère.
You'll be in the podcast. Don't
No.
worry.
We'll
We'll make sure we include you.
Bye-bye.